Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be replacing the spark plugs on the 2014 Toyota Tacoma with the V6 engine. First thing is to remove the two 10mm nuts holding onto the top engine cover. Once you got the cover off, you can get 3 spark plugs over here on the driver's side. They're kind of buried, but not too bad to get to. You'll see one right here. This is the ignition coil held on by a 10mm. And then you'll see the other ones over here just underneath all these hoses. We're going to go ahead and start by removing the connectors on all 3 ignition coils. Using a small pick and a flathead screwdriver will be very helpful here. We're going to pry up on the clip on the bottom side and then pull off the connector on all 3. So I got the connector off of one, but you're basically going to do that same procedure on the other 3. Same thing on the other side, but it's really hard to get the camera in there to show you, but you're just going to undo all 3 connectors. I think I got it right there. Yeah. So I got all 3 connectors removed from the ignition coils. They were kind of hard to get to, a bit of a tight squeeze. So I'd recommend we remove the bar with the 2 12mm bolts before we start removing those. So I'm going to be using a 8-inch extension with a 10mm that has a magnet at the tip in order to pull these 10mm out. I recommend the magnet just because you don't want it to fall once you remove it. So this magnet will hold on to it as you start to remove it. This makes it a lot easier so you don't risk dropping this. Let me just pull this off, set it to the side. Now using a 3/8 flex head ratchet and the 12mm socket, we're going to remove the 2 12s and the bar from the vehicle. So I'm going to release the bolts with the ratchet first and then drive them out with the electric ratchet. Now when you remove the lower one, you're going to want to hold on to that bolt just so it doesn't fall off. So once you got the bracket off, you got your 10mm off, the connectors are off. These coils are pretty easy to pull out. You just grab them and tug on them. They may be stuck to the coil just a little bit, but these don't tend to really get stuck like some other cars. Don't forget to pull the gasket out that comes with the ignition coil. If you pull it out and this is not on there, look for it down in there on the bore. And just set them down. It's not absolutely necessary to keep them in the same order. See the gasket here, it almost fell off, so just make sure they always come out with the gasket. Removing the ignition coil at the very end can be a little tight, and you should be able to remove it without removing this hose here, but just in case it is a little too tight for you, I'm going to show you how you can go around it. Pinch the clamp with 2 fingers like this, slide the clamp down, and then use a small flathead screwdriver to bring down the hose. Try not to use sharp objects like this. This can puncture that hose, so you want to go something a little more blunt, like a flathead, something that won't put a hole into that hose. Just kind of work its way down like that. So now with that hose completely out of the way, just slide it on up and you'll have easy access to pull that ignition coil out. With all the ignition coils removed, you're going to want to then proceed to remove the spark plugs one at a time. Don't remove them all at the same time, because then you might risk something randomly just falling down into that bore, and that's going to be really bad. So just reduce the amount of chance for that to happen. Remove them one by one. So I'm going to go ahead and use a 3/8 ratchet, about a foot-long extension, into a 5/8 spark plug socket. You want the spark plug socket that has the rubber insert on the inside. I know you can't see it on camera, but it will hold on to the spark plug once you pull it out. And if you do have tools, electric tools, we'll see the 1 foot is kind of tight, so we're going to go ahead and put another extension on this. If you do have electric tools, don't use them here. This is all done by hand. So now we're going to go ahead and put the spark plugs in. Again, no electric tools whatsoever here. Do everything by hand. If you're screwing them in and you feel something binding and you can't easily turn it just like this, it's going in sideways, so stop. take it out and retry again. You should be able to put these in by hand. All right, so the torque spec on these spark plugs are 20 Newton meters, like this, or if you have a foot-pounds, it's 15 foot-pounds. So 20 Newton meters or 15 foot-pounds. And I highly recommend you always install these and torque these down. You do not want to do these by hand. So I got this one torqued down right here. These other two are going to be the exact same process, but we're going to do them off camera. The torque spec for the 10 millimeter screw for the ignition coils is 10 Newton meters or about 7.4 foot-pounds. This doesn't necessarily have to be torqued down, but you just need to snug them down enough. But if you're wondering what the torque spec is, there it is. When installing the bracket right here, this bolt up on top, you want to start hand tight just a little bit, and then we're going to move to the bolt to the bottom. You're going to have 3 holes right here on the cylinder head. You're going to have one off to the left, one in the middle, and then one over here on to the right. The one you're going to look for is the one in the middle. Now to install the bolt with the least amount of effort, you're going to want to put that bracket right up against the cylinder head, and then and only then will those holes align for the bolt. So if you go to start the bracket and it's off like this, the holes will not align. You literally have to push the bracket to the metal right here, to the body, and then the hole will align. So I had to remove the bracket here. Just a heads up for you guys, plug in this hose before you put the bracket on, otherwise you really can't get it through. You can try to bend it under, but you really don't want to do that. Just take the extra step and do this before you put that. You don't want to damage this hose. One thing I also forgot to mention is when you're removing the bolts for this bracket right here, with the two 12 millimeters, you want to use a ratchet that has a flex head. If you have a fixed head like this, where it won't flex, it's going to be really hard to get down in there with that angle. So you definitely want to use the flex head on this. So you see here how I can flex the ratchet back and forth. If I didn't have the flex head, I'm going to be hitting the body. So everything's done on the driver's side. Now we're going to go ahead and move over to the passenger side. One thing I did a little different on the passenger side as far as the procedure was I removed the entire airbox. This is absolutely not necessary. All you need to do is remove this airbox here. Just remove the filter. Don't remove this, but I'm going to be doing it because I wanted to make the video as clear as possible. So for you guys doing it at home, just remove the 10 millimeter here and remove the air filter, and that will give you all the access you need to get to these spark plugs. And here's that shot that I wanted to show you guys. So now we're going to go ahead and replace these spark plugs. The process is going to be the exact same as the driver's side. Remove them one at a time, torque them down to 20 Newton meters or 15 foot-pounds. Service interval for these spark plugs are 30,000 miles, which is about 2 to 2.5 years. The job took me a total of about an hour and a half to an hour 45 with filming, so you guys can definitely get this done in about an hour. Install that engine air filter and you're all done. So once again, you don't need to remove the entire engine air box. That was just one extra step I decided to do for filming. So if you found value from the video, consider subscribing to the channel and check out my other videos where I share tips and tricks along the way. Share a video with someone who you think can benefit from my channel as well, and I'll see you in the next one.